welcome to In Case You Missed It. In today's video, we're going to break down Lieutenant General Khumalo's testimony at the Madlanga Commission. To help us stay on track, let's bring back our reference chart. Now, Khumalo falls under Camp 1. He's the head of crime intelligence in Gauteng. He's also the one who initially reached out to General Mkhwanazi for help, and that help came in the form of the Political Killings Task Team. But before we get into the details of his testimony, it's important to mention that Khumalo himself is currently out on a 10,000 rand bail alongside several co-accused. Khumalo is charged together with Major General Philani Lushaba, who's the CFO at Crime Intelligence, Major General Nosipho Precious Madondo, who's the head of Intelligence Analysis and Coordination, Major General Josias Lekalakala, who is the provincial head at Crime Intelligence in Gauteng, Major General Zwelithini Gabela, who's the Technical Management Services Specialist, Brigadier Pindile Ncube, who works at Personnel Security Vetting, and Brigadier Dineo Mukwele. The charges against this lot relates to the irregular employment of Brigadier Mukwele into a senior role within technical support services. The controversy, it's alleged that Mukwele's prior work experience was as a cleaner at BMW, and that she was elevated directly into the rank of brigadier without the required training or progression through lower ranks. With that context in mind, let's move on to what Khumalo had to say at the Madlanga Commission. Much of his testimony was similar to what General Mkhwanazi has already presented. However, Khumalo went a step further by introducing supporting evidence, primarily a series of WhatsApp exchanges between Brown Mokgotsi and Vusi Matlala. And these messages, they are very revealing. They don't just highlight communication between the two, they expose the nature of their relationship, and in so doing provide a clearer picture of the networks and dynamics at play behind the scenes. So let's dive into those WhatsApp conversations and unpack what they tell us about the links, influence, and possible motives driving this entire saga. Khumalo made it clear in his testimony that he will be presenting 5 sets of WhatsApp messages as part of his supporting evidence. And the first set are chats between Brown Mokgotsi and Vusi Matlala. The second set are chats between Vusi Matlala and a Major General Sinono, as well as his son. You'll remember that Major General Sinona is the head of DPCI, aka the Hawks, the same institution where a 200 million rand drug consignment went missing. And for context and background, you can check out a video I did on the DJ's killings and how this drug consignment fits in the grand scheme of things. The third set of chats are chats between Julius Mkhwanazi, the acting chief of police in Ekurhuleni, and Vusi Matlala. You will remember that at some point Vusi Matlala's security company's cars were fitted with blue lights, and it is said or alleged that Julius Mkhwanazi is the one who facilitated that whole process on behalf of Vusi. And the fourth set of chats is between Vusi and Calvin Rafadi. Calvin is a crime expert and an alleged SAPS registered informant. And the fifth set of chats are chats between Vusi as well as a Sulman Karim. Sulman, or rather there is a Sulman Karim, who is an ANC comrade. And just like Vusi owns a security company called Fusion. And Fusion, which is Karim's company, is very similar in branding to Vusi Matlala's company. So that's another link between the two gentlemen. I will do subsequent videos where I delve into deeper into the individuals that are now mentioned in addition to the long list of people linked to Vusi Matlala. And looking at this list, you can already see that it's not just random names, it's rather a web or a network of people that are all interlinked in one way or another. Now, the challenge is that this web can get complicated very quickly, but I'll do my best to simplify things as we go along. And to keep things clear in this video, we're only going to zoom in on the first set of WhatsApp chats between Brown Mokgotsi and Vusi Matlala, because that's what has been presented or shown by General Khumalo so far. And the other names will each get their own dedicated video later, because there's just too much detail to cover all at once. The WhatsApp chats between Brown Mokgotsi and Vusi Matlala started in December 2024. This timing is important because it lines up with the period where Vusi's home and businesses were raided by Khumalo and his team. Officially, the operation was described as a compliance inspection, which I'm assuming was related to Vusi's security company, CAT VIP, because they do deal with weapons and ammunition, so they have to be assessed for compliance. I guess this is how it was presented as reported by General Khumalo. At this stage in Khumalo's testimony, we see Vusi relying heavily on Brown Mokgotsi for intelligence. At this point, it looks like Brown has an upper hand, where Vusi is trying to understand why he is under, or rather he was under investigation at that point, and who was behind his investigation. Brown appears to be using his purported relationship with Senzo Mchunu to show Matlala his influence within SAPS. Brown goes as far as screenshotting purported texts between him and someone saved as Senzo Mchunu, and even shares the political killing stars team's disbanding letter, which was written and signed by Senzo Mchunu. And at that point, when he shared this letter with Vusi Matlala, it had not been made public knowledge. In fact, some of the officers at SAPS didn't even know about this letter, but Brown had a copy of the letter. So obviously it raises questions as to how a civilian like Brown Mokgotsi has access to classified police information. And interestingly, the letter turned out to be genuine, and it was indeed distributed later on to the people at SAPS in attempts to disband the PKTT. However, according to Khumalo and Mkhwanazi, the assumptions that the PKTT was leading the Vusi investigation was incorrect, because it was not the PKTT who was investigating Vusi Matlala. It was actually Khumalo's team. Remember, the two investigators that were left, the two investigators that were receiving death threats, they are the ones who were heading the probe on Vusi Matlala and Katiso and the so-called cartel and drug syndicate. So this means that Senzo and Sibiya were creating noise for the wrong investigating team, and they were drawing attention to themselves, which is why Mkhwanazi now alleges that they were trying to protect criminals. The risks now in this setup become clear. By setup, I mean the relationship between Mokgotsi, Senzo, Sibiya, and Vusi Matlala. It becomes clear when you see Brown Mokgotsi sending Vusi Matlala classified HR information of SAPS personnel, including the police officials' names, their ID numbers, and their residential addresses. This is where now the danger lies. Innocent people's lives are being exposed to alleged kingpins who could potentially target them, or even their family members for that matter. Brown doesn't stop there. He also shares screenshots of conversations between himself and Senzo's chief of staff, further establishing that he is acting as Vusi's informant within SAPS intelligence. Importantly, from what has been presented so far, there is no evidence that directly links or rather communication directly between Senzo and Vusi. So clearly Brown is the middle person, allegedly, between the two men. So one can speculate that Brown may be exaggerating his influence or even his relationship, or overplaying it, his relationship with Senzo and Sibiya. But that doesn't erase the fact that Senzo tried to disband the PKTT on New Year's Eve of all days, on a public holiday, where he should be celebrating with his family, but he was stressing about this PKTT. And Sibiya, on the other hand, he also urgently wanted the investigation dockets that were handled by the PKTT to be handed over to him urgently. So obviously those are red flags that one has to think about and consider as to why these two were so pressed to get rid of this PKTT and also take over the dockets they were investigating. So my take is that Vusi befriended Brown because of Brown's relationship with Senzo. But I don't think Vusi necessarily wanted to work with Brown, but he was using him as his way to get close to Minister Senzo Mchunu so that he can have Senzo in his pocket, so that he can get protection should anything go wrong. And with all these cases, also with his tender with SAPS, he wanted a relationship with Senzo because Senzo is the guy with the power and actual influence at SAPS, and not Brown Mokhotsi. Brown Mokhotsi was merely the middle person. You can even observe a shift in Vusi demeanor. In his early court appearances, he appeared very confident and untouchable on the photographs that were circulated online. But as soon as Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi exposed Vusi alleged allies at SAPS, that being Senzo and Sibiya, Brown Mokhotsi, he suddenly changed and he started to look noticeably nervous and less assured. I think he realized at that point that his house of cards was falling apart. And Brown is not the middleman for free, by the way. He consistently tries to extract money from this man, that being Vusi. He asks for funds for everything from sponsorship tables to flights, to accommodation, to food, entertainment, and even ANC membership fees. It reaches a point of embarrassment, really, and you can start to sense that Vusi is getting irritated with Brown's constant money demands. It became obvious after Madlala's SAPS tender was cancelled that things started to fall apart in this partnership. Vusi seemed to realize he had been backing a losing horse in Brown Mokhotsi, and the tone of his WhatsApp messages started to change from being nice and cooperative to outright threatening. Not long after, in May, Vusi himself was then arrested, as we all know, in connection with the attempted unaliving of Tebogo, which I feel like added to his mounting troubles. That's pretty much where the chats presented so far came to an end, but Khumalo didn't stop there. He went on to reveal that the cartel behind all of this actually has a name, and that name is called the Big Five. He confirmed that CAT and Katiso are members of this cartel, but the identities of the other three are still under wraps. And according to General Khumalo, to be part of this Big Five, one has to adhere to a strict set of criteria, such as having experience in crime and proven loyalty to the group. One needs to have a criminal record and a history of buying off cases or law enforcement. One needs to have registered businesses such as tenderpreneurship or security companies, obviously, to wash dirty money from, the drugs that are alleged that this cartel is distributing. And also you must remember with security companies, they get to buy ammunition and certain calibers of guns that ordinary citizens are not allowed to. So that's just another advantage of starting these security companies. And finally, a person must have dual citizenship, which will then allow the members of the cartel to travel freely between certain countries without drawing suspicion or without difficulty when crossing the customs. And just as things were getting deeper, the Madlanga Commission was abruptly adjourned with no proper explanation, I feel. This sudden pause obviously had people raising eyebrows, especially since around the same time Nathi Mthethwa, the former Minister of Police, was found dead in Paris under suspicious circumstances. You'll remember that Mkhwanazi had implicated Nathi on some of the corruption and political influence at SAPS, and he himself was due to appear before the commission. So here's what I want to know from you. Who do you think the other 3 members of the Big 5 cartel are? And also, do you think Nathi's death was linked to the commission, or was it just a freak accident? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and as always, I'll be back with another video once the Madlanga Commission resumes, so we can continue connecting the dots.